How does 2021's Mortal Kombat compare to the original 95 version?
I really like the tone of the 95 because we also remember, right, this is 20 years ago. So Mortal Kombat, the actual video game, is known to be campy, right? That's part of the culture of the game. 95 definitely leaned into some of that camp, whether it was visually, some of the gags, even, throwing out the catchphrases, but it worked, right? And when you fast forward to the 2021, and it feels like it's more inspired by Mortal Kombat's storytelling and lineage, but not really leaning into one of the things that really makes it Mortal Kombat, the fact that you're playing with violence and a little bit of camp. I also think really the 95 movie, the acting was just better. There's a lot more depth. I mean, you have Shang Tsung, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa. His representation of Shang Tsung is so good that they even brought his likeness to the the most recent Mortal Kombat 11 video game. And so that voice, that depth, that the evilness in him and his performance actually kind of was the thing that solidified that movie. I'm not hating on Chin Han's performance of Shang Tsung in this one, but it just didn't have the same gravitas. And I think when Shang Tsung is your big bad and he's kind of one of the big players on the board that is setting up all, everything, it takes away from kind of the epic scale of the movie. So those are kind of the two things that really stuck out for me when I compare 95 to 2021. But I did love how 2021, from the violence aspect, stayed really true to the game. I'm talking about specific fatalities that the fans, I was like, oh my God. And that's they should be serving that group too.
Yeah, and some of the settings that we got to see in this new movie when they vault us into the pit all of a sudden, we're like, oh my God, this is going to be great. And then the movie ends pretty much. But in 95, Jacqueline, I feel like what this movie, the new one does, is it makes me appreciate that 95 was so able to hit that tone that Brian was talking about, where there is going to be campiness and there are going to be some jokes. And Christopher Lambert as Raiden, definitely not the most culturally appropriate casting I've ever seen, but he certainly had fun, but he knew when to be serious, as did his counterpart, Shang Tsung. And it was just one of those things where I feel like that hit the more consistent tone. And maybe we took that for granted because it's a tough one to hit. And I feel like this new one had some great moments of comedy, particularly with Kano, but then it would veer into being so ultra serious that it almost felt like it was dragging.
Yeah. I'll just go ahead and say it. This is what's interesting. I played Mortal Kombat 10, which I believe was the first reboot that they did after a long pause with Mortal Kombat. Like they were doing like going to different realms and they were really like not doing the old school tournament. Then Mortal Kombat 10 came out and they went just straight old school. You, me, fight. You know what I mean? Like it felt like a throwback. This film felt more like an adaptation of that new storyline than it did of the old school franchises. So I think and that was more serious. The blood codes got way more elaborate. The fatalities got way more elaborate. And so if we separate the two in that, they're almost adapting different video games. And I think that's the way it is. And if you know anything about the director, Simon McQuoid, and I know a lot thanks to Mark Hoffmeyer, I think that is the reason why there's that disconnect between the original and this newer version. And because I played that one more recently than the old school ones, and that's more what it felt like. And the characters who are elevated are different. Johnny Cage is not as elevated in these newer ones. Some of these other folks that we're going to meet later. But I think they were not trying to get away from the camp entirely. They just didn't need it to be the whole movie. They centered it in on specific characters, which is exactly what the video game did. Because Mortal Kombat 10 had this guy called like the Drunken Master, who was literally like a drunken video game character.
Bill Wright show, baby.
Yes! And
so he farted, he burped, he threw up, he did it all.
Thank you. Oh, I love Brian here, who's going to help my brain that is awards addled remember the names of these folks. And yeah, so that I think is where that disconnect is. And so I won't even fault them on that.
It's great to hear that my road comedian behavior has finally been immortalized in a video game. That is very exciting. And sort of what Jacqueline's talking about here, Brian, is that feel of the two movies is so divergent. in large part because we don't have that tournament setting for the bulk of this movie. I mean, I actually said that between Godzilla versus Kong and now this new Mortal Kombat movie, I didn't necessarily need any humans to have lines or dialogue. I just wanted 2 or 3 announcers to be on the sidelines and just guiding us through the action like it is an actual sporting event, because it was such an easy tournament to follow in the original, and here we are getting deeper, getting into the storyline. So I guess my question for you is, where does your appreciation for them getting deeper into the lineage of Mortal Kombat and trying to get involved in these backstories versus just having that cool tournament look? Was it too much to try to cram all of that into one movie?
Well, the fact that we talk about how this is kind of like a character select first step of the movie, if I look at it that way, I think they did do a good job trying to at least develop some of these key character components. Now, when you talk about from a tournament standpoint, losing that, it makes the focus of the movie, it makes the entire tone and the feel of the movie different. The stakes just aren't as high, right? We're just establishing a group of individuals trying to figure out what their kana is, what their power is, versus some bad guys that are saying, we're going to stop you from that, versus this is the battle for the entire future of Earthrealm. Those are completely different stakes. So I think that is part of it. I do want to go back real quickly when we talk about even comparing the tone today and the past. We should even just talk about comparing the tone of this movie to the actual video games, because Mortal Kombat has an amazing, incredible story mode that everyone that follows the fighting game genre understands its depth, its breadth. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like the voice performances, I'm not even talking about the motion capture, the voice performances from the games were better than the performances of the actors in this movie. And I know they're just getting started. They're probably feeling out their characters as well. But that, I think, as someone who's like, oh my God, the story of the game is so incredible, when the movie can't get even close enough to that, you do feel like you're missing something as well.